fly fishing is a sport of connections. It starts with the personal connections made with the friends we fish with and those we meet on the water. There are the connections we establish with the places we fish, the locations as well as the cultures that fishing exposes us to. There are flight and travel connections, giving us access to far-off places to search out new species and explore distant waters. And of course, the most primordial and basic connection of all, that of the angler to the fish, once the hook is set and the line comes tight. There is no place more connected, with more people, technology, and chaotic energy than Tokyo, Japan. Which is why it's strange that in this city of 30 million people, we find one American who has made the journey from the Rocky Mountains across the Pacific to fly fish. Jimmy Bartschi from the small mountain town of Rico, Colorado, has made the trip to the land of the rising sun to meet up with an old friend. And no, not that kind of friend. Tokyo is an amazing place, one of the busiest and most modern cities in the world. And it always seems that no matter where you find yourself in the city, there is literally something for everyone. Even a fanatical angler in need of some serious help. Jimmy spent time in the city before, however, so there is little that surprises him. With more than 8 trips to Japan under his belt, he's comfortable walking the streets of Tokyo at any time of the day, setting out on foot to meet up with a longtime fishing friend. Masa Katsumata is that longtime friend. And where, you might ask, in one of the most congested areas in this part of the world, can you find good fishing water? Believe it or not, only a short trip from this giant metropolis is one of the most pristine and serene fisheries found anywhere in the world.
It's pretty amazing. Masa and I have been friends for probably 20 years now. We met through fly fishing. In fact, we met on his honeymoon when he came to the States, and one of his dreams was to visit the Scott fly rod shop And from that day on, we've been great friends. We've had an opportunity to share all kinds of things that I probably would have never gotten to experience without him, and vice versa. So, I was able to introduce him to his first tarpon and his first permit in the Florida Keys, but he's been able to introduce me to this amazing mountain Yamame fishing, and a great experience that's come because he's such a good friend and has been so generous sharing his culture and his home with me.
Throughout Japan, and usually referred to as a trout, native Yamame are actually a small, landlocked form of the larger, sea-run cherry salmon. Incredibly spooky and selective, these tiny fish average 5 to 8 inches long, with a 10-inch fish considered a trophy. The fact that these ultra-spooky fish live in small, crystal-clear mountain streams can make them very difficult to catch, even using the smallest flies and the lightest tippet. Having fished all over the world, Masa appreciates this as much as anyone.
Lots of my friends, both American and Japanese friends, ask me, Masa, which is more difficult, Henry's Fork Rainbow or Yamame? It is a tough question. Yamame might be more difficult to hook. Henry's Fork 20-inch fish is more difficult for land. So I would say even. This is a good answer, even. Both are difficult. Yamame fishing with Jimmy is for him, not for me. If he catches beautiful Yamame, it is more than Yamame for me. He's smiling, his exciting actions, it's more than I'm fishing.
A really interesting aspect of mountain fishing in Japan is that, some people say, you're gonna go all the way to Japan to catch a 5-inch fish? That's ridiculous, because at home, our mountain streams, whether it's East Coast brook trout or Rocky Mountain cutthroats or Sierra Nevada golden trout, which would be similar experiences to what this mountain fishing is like, is really pretty easy. Any old attractor dry works, you can catch as many fish as you want. But a huge difference here, and one of the contrasts in Japan, is that these are some of the most technical and difficult fish to catch anywhere. In fact, I would put them up against our toughest tailwater fish at home. So it's really fun to go out and do something that we think of at home as simple and easy, and have your world turned upside down when a 5-inch fish drifts back, sniffs your fly, and completely refuses it, and you have to go back into the box and pick a trickier pattern to tie onto your 8X. These fish are so spooky, so difficult to catch. You really have to come in aware of that. Often come in on hands and knees or belly crawl into a lie. These fish really like to hold in shallow tail outs, so you don't have much more than a cast or two to either convince them to eat your fly or send them, under the rocks hiding. So it makes it really fun, and it just goes to show it's not really the size of the fish, but it's more the experience in the environment, where a teeny little fish like this can be every bit as challenging and exciting to catch as what we normally consider a big trophy fish.
I hope Jimmy understands she is jewel of Japan and Masa's favorite fish. Today, Jimmy learned a lot of, mountain creeks, okay? He's a real fisherman. He's a great fisherman. But yamame fishing, when he saw the yamame like a 10-inch fish, probably easy. But she's not. First step, all fish is gone. Stop eating. And he wants to wait. Hey, Masa, let's wait. Jimmy, I don't think so. If they spook, they won't eat next few hours. Easy. Because no people near here. If they see your lead hat, they don't like your lead hat. Jimmy wore the lead hat today. I think that lots of Mamame knew Jim Bartschi was here. Because we never wear bright color hat for yamame fishing. I think Jimmy is the first guy wearing the red cap, trucker cap, with flat, flap, and then this yamame stream. It was, looks very weird for me, but Jimmy doesn't change his style. I will give him one new camouflage cap. I hope he understood why several yamame spooked, because he wore red cap. It was funny.
Fishing with my friends here in Japan is always fun. There's always room to goof off and joke with one another. For instance, if you miss a fish, it's drop and give me 10.
Difficult fishing always fun for both Jimmy and me. If fishing is easy, maybe we won't go. If fishing is difficult, okay, we gotta go. That's it. Especially like a fish with him, even like no fishing, that means no fish, no heads, no lice, still fun. And give him a prize, he gives me a prize, and he guides me, I guide him. The life is fly fishing. This is no border, no skin colors. Just we want to catch a nice, beautiful fish. That's it. Yeah, he's my brother from another mother.
One of the great things about fly fishing and being part of it is the friendships that we make. And it's amazing. I would have never known Masa had it not been for fly fishing. And even though our relationship has lasted decades and transcended just fishing, in the end, it's really the fishing that brought us together and keeps us together.
Imagine for a moment that you're a tarpon. You live in the warm waters of the Caribbean, swimming and eating with not a care in the world. Since you are migratory by nature, you eventually find your way to Cuban waters, where life is easy, food is plentiful, and angling pressure is almost non-existent. And in Cuba, all is good, until one summer day, when you meet a fisherman by the name of Greg Vincent. Vincent loves fishing the flats of Cuba. Although he lives in the Bahamas, he fishes Cuba on a regular basis, having made more than a dozen trips to the island in the past 20 years. And it's easy to understand why he loves these waters, especially when he's just hooked 5 tarpon on his very first morning of fishing.
Jardín de la Reina is a unique place, it really is, because it's been virtually untouched. I think the only sort of people that used to come to these areas was like spongers and lobster fishermen. That was it. It's relatively isolated, or very much isolated, and it's such a varied environment from the coral flats to marl flats to soft sand, grass flats, hard. You can get out and wade, no shoes at all. Just get out and wade. It's been left pretty much, I'm sure, as it's always been. You know, you can tell by the fish. The fish just swim around. They don't have a care in the world. They swim right to the boat. The tarpon eat like they've been chasing flies their whole life. It's unique in so many different ways. Regardless of the fishing, it's unique in the fishing in so much as untouched, but just unique in its natural environment. It's raw.
Located 60 miles off the southern coast of Cuba, the only operation in the entire area is Avalon's Tortuga houseboat, a dream oasis for fly fishermen and Greg's base of operations for the week.
It's all about the fishing. I've run into so many different characters and so many different people, whether it's guide or whether it's a client or whether it's, you know, the staff. It's just a wonderful place, it really is. It's unique in so many ways, and it just seems to get better. Every time I come back to Cuba, it just gets better and better and better.
In his many trips to Cuba, Greg has traveled throughout the country. From the small rural towns to the heart of old Havana, one thing he has learned is that life in Cuba is lived in the streets.
The street sounds of Cuba are very unique. Just about every block in Havana seems to have some sort of music. And outside of the city, you watch the people, they just have a way about themselves and a way of going about things, and they do it all with a smile. So it's not an artificial smile, so to speak. It's not there for the camera or there for the tourist or there for any other reason other than that's just the way they are. Everyone needs each other, and they know that, and they're willing to accept that. It's just instinctive and natural for the Cuban people to want to do that. And it's there. You can, like I said, you can sit on the side of the road and watch the world go by, and that's what you see. That's what comes back. At least it does to me. It's people that have very little that are doing so much. You mentioned the word Havana, and to most people, and it won't take long before the name Ernest Hemingway seems to pop up. And it is amazing in Havana how that person has generated so much interest in the place. I think that's where the uniqueness comes with Hemingway, is that you had Hemingway as the author and the fisherman, and then you had Gregorio Fuentes, which was the Cuban aspect of it, the famous boat captain, you know, the old man in the sea. So it made a great sort of union between the two of them. So you could be proud, whether it be as from a writing standpoint, or you can also be proud whether it be from a Cuban working man standpoint. And the two of them met somewhere, and it created this buzz of excitement at the time, and it just seems to have continued on. And it's something that the Cuban people are very proud of, whether it's Hemingway or Gregorio Fuentes, but what they're most proud of is when the two of them were together.
In all of his travels around Cuba, we're fairly certain that Hemingway never made it to the island of Cayo Largo. Certainly not the Cayo Largo of today. If you've been to this island for anything other than fishing, then you probably wear one of these. Or perhaps you're an aspiring fashion photographer, cruising the beaches for new material to add to your Facebook page. European and Canadian tourists who flock to the small island by the plane load, Cayo Largo is home to several large resorts and some of the best beaches in the Caribbean. But look beyond the bronze skin, the bottomless rum drinks, and the ever-present European grape smugglers, and you find yourself surrounded by a huge network of flats and some of the finest permit fishing in the world.
We had a wonderful week of tarpon fishing. It's so different, you know, fish, the tarpon, for example, here, you just put the fly anywhere near them and they eat it. It didn't matter, just put it somewhere in front of them and strip it and they were going to eat it. So you're looking at, you know, what that's telling you is, oh, these fish, you know, have never been really fished for. So you have to make the assumption that the permit also have never really been fished for. Unfortunately, they're still, you know, stuck up, stubborn, selfish, finicky, egotistical bastards. It's very much a mental game with them because they don't act like a lot of other fish do. That pompous jack in them, that sort of ability to just snub you as if you don't exist. Sort of, you throw a fly in there, they sort of look up at you, you know, really? Honestly? What are you thinking? Get out of my life.
The permit in Cuba, while numerous, are no different than the permit anywhere else in the Caribbean. At times finicky and ultra-selective, it takes a great guide, the right conditions, and a serious amount of teamwork to make it all happen.
You see it or not? I don't see anything. On 11 o'clock, about 45 meters and coming. See you? Yep. Go.
I love fishing for them. One of my favorite, if not my most favorite fish to throw a fly at. I can manage a week of it, whether it's been good fishing or bad fishing, because it does drain you a lot. You know, you need to get it right when you get the opportunities, and that's quite mentally draining. So, I mean, even just from a recreational standpoint, just to go out and catch one, the stress can be quite overwhelming. So a week of it is about all I can take. Then I need to go on to something that's a little bit more normal. Permit fishery in Cayo Largo, they certainly, what I was exposed to while we were there, was definitely focused on permit that are either going to be with rays or they're going to be swimming, moving. So you're fishing for them slightly deeper than some areas, but either way, in doing so, you were exposed to these huge flats that likely just hole all day and probably have as much chance of success as trying to define flats like other areas, try to work tides, trying to be in the right place at the right time. I didn't get that feeling in Cayo Largo. It's just an expanse that needs to be covered.
When a stingray feeds in shallow waters, crabs, shrimp, and other small creatures will oftentimes scatter and flee as the ray works its way across a flat. For permit, a cruising ray can easily become an aquatic buffet line, serving up a constant supply of easy food. time in the northern Rockies. And in Yellowstone National Park, the change of season means new life for the creatures that call this area home. As the world's most famous national park, Yellowstone has become an iconic symbol of the American West and the American wilderness. A place that is still as timeless today as it was for the region's early explorers. Over the years, Yellowstone has impacted the lives of many who have been lucky enough to experience the park. From presidents and dignitaries to the millions of tourists that visit the area each year. And despite the large number of annual visitors that descend upon the park each summer season, with over 2.2 million acres of wilderness, the vast majority of Yellowstone remains natural, pristine, and completely untouched. Just as existing history books of Yellowstone list the names of those who have left their mark on the area in the past, the writings of the future that talk about fly fishing in the park will no doubt include the name of Craig Mathews, a guide, outfitter, and fly shop owner who has called this area home for more than 30 years.
Yellowstone country has impacted our life in so many positive ways. I can't even begin to tell you. It would take hours to tell you. But it's just been such a wonderful experience being here for so long and being able to bring other people, other visitors to Yellowstone. And with that, they can't experience it all. I tell people, take their time, let it sink in, taste it, breathe it, smell it. Then it begins to really sink into your life how important this place is and how it can impact your life from here and forever, and your children's lives and your grandchildren's lives.
Decades that he has spent fishing, guiding, and exploring Yellowstone, Craig has learned a lot about an area that he considers the most unique and special in all of North America.
Well, with over 2,000 miles of trout stream, prime trout stream, probably the best trout fishing in the world, if you will, and much of it open, probably 98.5% of it open to the public, it's overwhelming. So consequently, people come with a preconceived idea, I got to fish it all. Believe me, you can't fish it all in a lifetime. And consequently, you see people driving 100 miles an hour going from point A to point B trying to fish it all. They spend their entire vacation driving so fast and driving so far to try to experience everything Yellowstone has to offer in terms of fly fishing that they've barely scratched the surface. So with that, I tell people, I always advise people, take your time. If you're here for a week, take one day and explore some of these what I call overlooked and underfished waters of Yellowstone. Here we are within a mile of a major highway, and we have not seen one human footprint on this river. And we've caught browns up to 4 pounds and rainbows up to 3 pounds. It's open to the public. It's in Yellowstone National Park. Spend one day of your vacation and explore some of these grossly overlooked waters in Yellowstone.
professional guide and longtime Yellowstone angler, John Hudgens.
What draws me here and why I eventually moved to the greater Yellowstone ecosystem all kind of happened when I was in my teenage years and I first explored Yellowstone and backcountry fishing. I still feel that energy and enthusiasm when I return to Yellowstone Park. It's what really started my addiction to fly fishing, and this is such an interesting area. It's so busy yet so remote at the same time that the minute you step off the pavement here, you're in the wild.
It's now the height of summer in the park, and many of Yellowstone's rivers are thick with salmon flies and other hatches. John Hudgens has been joined by fellow guide Jonathan Heems for a trip into the backcountry.
When you set foot into the park, you sort of have a little different change, a change of pace. Things seem to slow down a little bit. You hit that first speed limit sign, it's 45 miles an hour, and where you might be hurrying to get to the river somewhere, you're really not here. It's a lot more about the journey and not the destination, which is a pretty fun way of poking around in here. The remarkable thing really is how quickly you get into a wilderness setting. You can be on the road, pull over and walk 10 minutes and all of a sudden you can't hear anything, and you're really out in amongst the mountains, the wildlife. You're got your bear spray on and ready to take that sort of experience. Fishing in the park as opposed to fishing outside of the park is reflective of that same experience. You still sort of get that on-foot, total wade fishing experience, and there's just always that, the fact that if you walk a little further, you're just getting into the depths of a national park, and Yellowstone it's just endless.
It's neat to live right close to this ecosystem, this park, and every time I come in, I have a great experience, and I learned something new, and I usually go somewhere new. It's so expansive that you can never cover it all.
Being able to come out into a place like the park in the middle of a busy guide season with a friend like John is just, it's a great experience. Just it's a nice little break from the routine, and really fun to be able to go poke around in a place we don't frequent that much, a place that we don't guide in very often, and just go spend the day together. We, in our guiding careers and fishing careers, started off fishing an awful lot together, and kind of working not so much, and went through some starving artist years there where we got to fish lots together and got to really enjoy each other's company and time outside. And it's, that's an important part of living life, I think, is to, as you get busier with other things, just make sure you make time for the things that were and still are important. And yeah, great to be out here with my old buddy.
It's incredible in that you can go to Russia, and the Russians or the Chinese or the Slovakians or the Ukrainians or the Mexicans or wherever you go, they know 3 words. They know McDonald's, they know Coca-Cola, and they know Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone was our nation's first national park. A lot of people don't realize it. It was the world's first national park. It all begins in Yellowstone Park.
For some, a relationship with the park begins at a young age, as they learn the secrets of the area by following in the footsteps of those who have come before. Such was the case with Yellowstone outfitter Shane McLaughlin.
When I come out here, I think back to the Washburn expedition, the guys that explored it. There were 9 guys from Helena, Montana who came down here. And they came down and they explored it, and once they saw it, they said, we can't keep this to ourselves. They said, we need to go tell other people about it and do something to protect it. So they went back to Washington and lobbied Congress, and Congress sent out the Hayden expedition in 1871 who verified what they said. And then they all went back and told the government, we need to protect this place. So when they did, they signed it into law. Ulysses S. Grant signed it into law in 1872. And I am like those guys from Helena, Montana, the Washburn expedition. I came and I saw it, and when I was 18, I thought, I just want to be here myself. But it didn't take me 3 or 4 months to say, I got to show other people this. I mean, this isn't something I can keep to myself. I can't absorb it all. I got to take it in and then give it back out. And that's what I've done for the last 20 years.
In the spirit of Yellowstone's early explorers, Shane today operates a backcountry horsepacking service. His company, Sunrise Pack Station, specializes in bringing visitors and anglers into the furthest depths of Yellowstone's wilderness. Joining Shane for a midsummer trip into the backcountry are Britta Shaw and Danielle Will, 2 anglers from nearby Bozeman, Montana.
To be in a place like this, it kind of makes you realize what's important in life. I mean, everyone's got to wake up every day and go to work and pay bills, and when you come out here, it's kind of, it's God's country. It's where you want to be, and you realize what's important.
I think you can do as much fishing in Montana or all across the West as you want, but getting into the park and getting into the boundary, you don't see houses, you don't see nearly as many people. Obviously the wildlife is more abundant, but you just get a different experience being in the park.
Shane has been amazing in sharing his knowledge and his passion for the park with all of us. His ability to share that passion is extraordinary, and you truly feel that connection with the park that he felt the first time he probably came in.
Because everybody around the world knows Old Faithful, they know the big falls, but they don't know back here. And I like to share this part with them, the real Yellowstone, the wild Yellowstone that nobody sees from the road. And I think the more people I can take out here and show them what this is and how it all works together, that they will go home and when they hear something about Yellowstone, oh, I've been to that place and I know what that's like and I want to protect that. I want my kids to see that and I want my grandkids to see that. So taking everybody out here and teaching them more than just the photograph, but teaching them the depth of Yellowstone, I think they'll go home and protect that and take that inside with them.
Ever since I was a child, my parents and my grandparents instilled a sense of conservation in all of us kids about giving back to a resource that does so much for us. And when we moved here, and when I firsthand experienced this resource, I knew that I had to jump in with both feet. And people that come here and experience, particularly fly fishermen, they experience this country and the wild trout and the clean air and the clean water and everything that Yellowstone has to offer. Everybody jumps in with both feet, and they try to do whatever they can financially and physically to help Yellowstone country and its wild places and wild things.
It's July in Alaska, and this aircraft is headed to a fishing and outpost operation in the remote Yukon Drainage. When most anglers hear the words Alaska and July, they immediately think of trophy trout and salmon, the traditional angling staples in a state that's world famous for its fishing. Brian Porter, however, is the exception. Born and raised in Minnesota, Brian is a pike fisherman, a species he's been obsessed with since he first learned how to fish. So when he heard about a remote fishery in a place where the sun never sets, Brian headed north. And from the moment he arrived, he knew that he had indeed found the perfect destination for a pike-addicted, angling insomniac. This is Midnight Sun Trophy Pike Adventures, an operation that is 100% dedicated to catching huge pike in the shallow drainages of the Yukon River. totally unique with regards to their location and their style of operations, Midnight Sun utilizes a 70-foot houseboat as a floating base camp, allowing guides and guests immediate access to an area that is home to some of the best pike fishing in the world. With the longest daylight hours in the world, this is a destination that can easily satisfy the most die-hard anglers, even those who can never seem to get enough fishing crammed into a single day.
They call this place Midnight Sun, and it's no joke. I mean, there's really not day and night. It just drags on and on. It's another day, and it all just kind of flows together. You go out, especially on these low clouds, rainy days, the light doesn't change much. It's just another hour. Pretty soon you look down at your watch and it's midnight. You could really fish yourself into a coma here if you weren't careful.
Scott Rocamp is Midnight Sun's co-owner and head guide, a man who knows plenty about long days on the water.
You know, the Yukon Drainage is one of the biggest fisheries in the world, you know, and it has a ton of pike. You're right, everybody does think about the salmon and the trout, and that's the exact opposite of what we are. We're a big, huge, flat delta full of mud and just huge, massive pike, you know, tons of pike, just by the boatful. They're indigenous to the area. They grow slow, but they get big, and they're strong, beautiful girls.
Well, I grew up fishing for pike and muskies with conventional gear, and honestly now it seems a little crude. The pure way to me is, you know, you tie some deer tail and some chicken feathers and a little bit of flash onto a hook, and they just come after it. It's also really a subtle presentation. You're not putting out a big splash with a giant bait hitting the water. Really, to me, pike and muskies too, any kind of esox, toothy critters, they're really one of the ultimate pursuits on a fly. That's what they do, is kill, and you can really, really put out a good target for them with a fly. Well, these fish are laid up in shallow water, and they're big fish, so that makes a lot of this really cool. You lay that fly out there, a lot of times 1 or 2 twitches, and here comes jaws. Wait till it disappears, wait till that head turns, and hammer down. It's intense. It's all right there, not deep down where you can't see it. It's very, very visual.
And when Scott is your guide, the fishing is not only visual, but incredibly audible as well.
Here comes set! Oh, set it, that's a monster. Oh geez, set it hard. Another spook out of the hole. Where's my window? There we go, good job. Pulling us off, pulling us off, pulling us off. Holy shitzer, that was huge take. Oh my God.
God, they look so big when they eat.
God, it's scary, isn't it? It's like Jaws, that one came out of nowhere.
We have different sizes of pike up here. You know, we have different names for the different sizes of them, obviously. kind of make them up as we go. But the ones that I like to go by is, we got the little hammer handles. I've kind of replaced that with Katie's fish, because that's my daughter, and those are the ones that I want her to catch. And we got turbos, you know, those are the, you know, the strong ones, you know, they're real small. They make huge attacks, and they just engulf flies and rip all over the place, and just, you know, just raise all sorts of hell. And mini tankers, mini 38s, 42s kind of realm, you know. Strong fish, beautiful fish, you know, really aggressive, big takes, you know, the whole thing, the whole gamut with those fish. And then you got your tanker class, 47 and above. And then your mega tankers, or battleships, or destroyers, or whatever you can really come up with. Red Octobers, Kraken, that's the one I've been hunting for years. I love Kraken. I missed her a few times. I'll get her though. Just need to be in the right place at the right time. But yeah, you know, we'll get her someday. I've seen her a few times.
So if you're the type of angler who's too obsessed with fishing to sleep, you can always head north to Alaska, where you just might find your own Yukon Kraken. If someone were to describe the state of Maine to a person who had never been there, they might talk about the quaint seaside villages, the classic New England churches, and the ever-present nautical knickknacks adorning maritime cottages. And of course they would describe the salty old locals who are always quick to remind you that you can't get there from here. They would talk about Maine's classic lighthouses and the sailboats. But above all, they would talk about the lobsters. Maine is world famous for its lobsters, which is something that the locals will never let you forget. The fly fishing in Maine is nowhere near as famous as the lobsters, especially when the fishing takes place from the front of a flats boat more at home in the waters of the Caribbean, an unusual sight for sure in northern New England. For Casco Bay guide Eric Wallace, however, fishing from a flat skiff is the only way to fish these waters.
Casco Bay area, in the Portland area of Maine, offers the angler unbelievable fishing opportunities as far as anything from sand flats to just fishy structure along hundreds of islands. And add into that a host of bait fish and food. It's a giant soup kitchen for these fish. This is a great place. Once we get a lot of fish in this area in middle of summer, when areas to the south slow down, our fishing can be very, very consistent and good.
Water dragon spinning fireballs underneath the perfect sky somewhere very far away. Fools playing in the paradise song. All we can do is try to find our way back one of these days. I had a dream of falling stars in ocean. Waves were rolling me. Caught up it seems I'ma slowly get way too lonely here up in this sea. Like water, the warriors drift away.
Eric first brought his flats boat up from Florida, intent on sight fishing the white sand flats found throughout the Casco Bay region. His plan was to fish for striped bass, New England's iconic fish species, with the same tactics that he had learned while fishing for permit in the Keys, a definite departure from traditional striper techniques.
Not perfect, but I feel
Blind casting with big sink tips all day long just isn't my way of fishing. I'd rather count my day in shots at a dark back fish coming across the sand flat than how many fish I caught just blind casting some structure. And when I talked about it at first, I got looked at like I was crazy. Cracking a striper on the head with a crab pattern? Well, you're just gonna spook them. Well, what I realized is fish, you get a group of fish and if they're on a flat and they're moving around and you just learn their body language, putting a fly really close to them, they're going to respond to it almost like a permit will. If they're in a group of 2 or 3, one of them wants to get to that crab. You know, for me, it's not about catching. It's about getting the look, getting to eat. It's not about numbers.
Worries drift away.
One of Eric's regular fishing partners is native Mainer and Portland resident Mac McKeever, who had also been drawn to the sight fishing on the shallow, white sand flats early in his striper fishing career.
Sight fishing for striped bass from a flats boat is very unique for this area. But the cool thing is we have a world-class sight fishing fishery here. I've taken hardcore bone fishermen who've been all over the world chasing bonefish. I've taken them here on some of these flats, and they're like, this is like Ackland's Island, you know, this is like Andros. The water's so clear, the sand is so white. This is the real deal.
As far as comparing it to the tropical sight fishing, you know, there's some sand, some light-colored sand bottoms where you could confuse somebody by photos. And having the anglers and the casting skills with the longer leaders and the Merkin style patterns to put that together, it's just it makes my summer totally enjoyable. I look forward to an incoming tide and the bright sun. To me, this is, you know, most people, they think that's dog days of fishing. To me, that's the game. That's when it's fun.
If you think about the shape of a striper's body and how it's meant to feed in rough water with that big broad tail, that makes it a wonderful, wonderful game fish. They use that big broad tail and that big broad body to their advantage, so it's a terrific fight. If striped bass jumped, they'd be one of the top game fish in the world.
Since Eric's original plan was to employ key-style techniques on Casco Bay's shallow flats, it is only fitting that these stripers can at times behave in the same fickle and difficult manner as bonefish and permit.
Drop it. He's coming. Go. Oh! What the f***? What the f*** was that? Put it back in front of him.
The addictive part of permit angling is the mental beating, and I'd have to say, for fishing the sand flats for the striped bass angler, this is that. You know, the refusals on the flats is humbling, but it's also the most rewarding, most challenging way to catch these fish. Once you get into the game, you just don't want it to end.
Maine will always be known for lobsters, a beautiful coastline, and lighthouses. But will the flats boat ever become a recognized symbol for the state? Probably not. heavy-footed American walking through the bush and scaring away the wildlife is Jeff Currier. And if you recognize the name, then you probably know that Jeff has spent years traveling the world in search of new species and unfished waters. And in dozens of countries, throughout all his travels, Jeff has learned that success on the water almost always begins by tapping in to local knowledge. No matter where on the planet he finds himself, Jeff also has a gift for diffusing potentially tense situations, proving once again that fishing can break down cultural differences and language barriers faster than anything. Despite the distances, logistics, and a heavy dose of the unknown, this trip has started out well for Jeff. After 2 solid days of travel from his home in Idaho, he finds himself on yet another airplane, taking him even further into the wild. When visiting a new and unknown destination, the travel itself is a big part of the adventure, and nothing says remote and unfamiliar like a dirt landing strip covered with wildlife in Tanzania. Fishing and their Manyara River Camp, a new operation located in southern Tanzania. Even after a long journey, what's the first thing that any die-hard angler does upon arriving in camp? You immediately recon the water. Are home to an incredible strain of very large, very aggressive African tigerfish. While some fish can be called beautiful, graceful, or noble, the tigerfish is best described as violent, brutal, and ferocious. Jeff has traveled to Tanzania to fish with the guides of Tourette Fishing. This pioneering operation was started by Keith Clover and his partner Rob Scott, who've been joined by fellow guide Leonard Fleming, all 3 South Africans who have literally grown up in the wilds of Africa. Rob have been chasing tigerfish their entire lives. They've spent the last 10 years searching out undiscovered and unfished waters, always with the hope of finding a river that is home to the largest standard tigerfish in all of Africa.
The whole appeal of a tigerfish is just that it's so out there. It's the tigerfish is just epitomizes Africa. It's wild. It's beautiful. They're ferocious fish, and it's not many people that have actually come out here and fly fished for them. They're absolutely stunning fish, strong, fast. They look mean as hell. They're fantastic.
they're like the street fighters. They're like, they're just hardcore. Sometimes when you get a big fish next to the boat, there's nothing pretty about it because sometimes it's so big that it's ugly. It's like a warthog. It's so ugly that it's actually beautiful.
Discovering these beautiful aquatic warthogs did not come easy, and as Keith recalls, they certainly paid their dues with their explorations.
It was actually really frustrating getting in the first time after 36 hours of driving, GPSing and doing all the research, and we missed a fuel line for the boat. So I had 4 days to really reconnaissance the area and check it out, and 3 of those days were spent tying flies in camp because we had no way to access the water. On the 4th day, we eventually got a fuel line in from Dar es Salaam, along a train, a bicycle, and a bus, and a Swahili man running through the bush, and you get a fuel pipe. And I got up onto the water. It was a tough day, fishing-wise, early in the year, not prime season. But the first 3 fish I hooked were way bigger than any fish that I had experienced on the Zambezi or the Okavango. So, I mean, it just blew my socks off from the first sort of minute.
Today, Currier Fishing now operates camps on 2 incredibly remote and untouched rivers. Waters that are home to some of the largest tigerfish in Africa. Having begun their quest with nothing more than a rumor of great fishing, their ambition and hard work have definitely paid off.
The areas are so vast, it took us a while to get our minds around it, get our hands around it. I mean, we were sitting at desks, poring over maps, spending hours on Google Earth, trying to zoom in and look where the rivers went. On the Ruhuji, I mean, it's 110 kilometers of water to the top. No one's ever been up there. On the Maniera, it's 70 kilometers of water, so it's about 40 miles of water plus the rapids. So just arriving here on the ground, trying to get our hands around that and explore the whole area was absolutely mind-blowing.
What's really incredible about this place this week is, number one, how far we are out in the bush. I mean, we're not near a city. We're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. I mean, it was a 2-hour private charter flight to get here. We're not in a national park. There are national parks all over Africa you can go to, but you're going to see other people, other tourists and stuff. There's none of that here. We fished 2 rivers this week that, sure, they knew there were rivers here, but the fishery wasn't discovered till 2008. That's incredible. I mean, I've been a lot of places in the world, but the rivers and the fisheries have been known about probably since before I was born. But there's very few places like this left on the planet, and it's too bad that, all serious anglers and travelers don't get a chance to experience something like this. I mean, I feel extremely privileged, and I'm really glad that Keith and Rob came here and explored it in 2008, and now I've got a chance to get a piece of the action.
But when it comes to getting a piece of the action, landing a tigerfish is never easy. Aside from their razor-sharp teeth and an ability to shred steel leaders, tigers are also adept at wrapping fly lines around trees, rocks, and structure. And the occasional waterlogged hippo carcass. Then there's the physical challenges of chasing tigers. Balancing and fishing from the bow of a small metal boat where bad-tempered, aggressive hippos can always make things interesting. And let's not forget the ever-present African crocs that easily reach lengths in excess of 20 feet. All that aside, the biggest challenge for the angler is the simple act of setting the hook in their hard, bony mouths.
You don't just cast your fly out there and catch them, because these fish have incredibly hard mouths. And there's all teeth in there, so there's not a whole lot of places for your fly to hook up to these fish. You throw out there, boom, you get an unbelievable strike, you think you're set, fish jumps, hook flies out. You get a little bummed, throw out there again, hook another fish. Fish jumps, hook flies out. You think you're doing something wrong, but you're really not. It's just that, you know, 1 out of every 5 fish, you might get good penetration inside the mouth. Sometimes these fish, they're so strong, they'll actually bite your fly like it's a game, and you'll fight them halfway to the boat, and then they just let go, like they were just holding it loose in their mouth. So it can be a little frustrating at times, but that's tiger fishing.
And when you do connect with your first truly large tigerfish, it quickly leads to what the boys like to call tiger fever.
It's a feeling that you can't beat. It's that first hit that pushes the adrenaline and heart rate through the roof. And once you have had a hit and you've got the fever, there's not much you can do to draw yourself away from tigers. They're incredible fish, and they really make an honest angler.
Any creature with teeth like this, living in such a hostile and hazardous environment, will most definitely keep any angler honest.
Supper, Tijaman, hey yo. Hey yo, yala joxe di xagne, Tijaman, hey yo. Xey bis ñak cër metti na loolu lool. Jur doom andiwul cër, tiis na loolu lool. Bu leen di daw, la ko du wees a wees, boo jegeegul dex yow.
At this point of the trip, I thought I'd seen Africa, and all of a sudden we roll into the camp of the Ruhuji River, and it was like going even further into Africa. This was the Africa you imagined as little kids. Africa always has an incredible way of surprising you. And we're going up the river and, you know, around every corner is another animal. It was just spectacular. But 4 hours up the river, all of a sudden, we must have been coming up in a village. And this guy, he probably heard our motor coming for a while and he wanted to see what was going on. I don't know who was more shocked, him or us. So when we broke out the rods, it really blew their minds. The boys and the men, they were really impressed. They watched very inquisitively. They wanted to see what was going on. But the women, they were not impressed at all. Trips like these are so great. They're so incredible because it removes you from the rest of the planet, something everybody needs to do now and then. This particular place is beyond removed. And at this point in the trip, I'm so exhausted, but it's the kind of exhaustion I love. And despite how tired I am, I'm always thinking about the fishing again and, you know, what's going to happen tomorrow. You know, this has been a great trip. We've caught some huge tiger fish. We got another day. Maybe we can catch a bigger one.
After 10 days in the bush, it's Jeff's last day in Africa, and the boys have planned something special. They've made the journey to a remote area that they've taken to calling the Garden of Eden. This section of river is a favorite for Tourette team member Leonard Fleming, who is not only a guide, but also a PhD in biology and a scientist fascinated with the discovery of new species.
I think scientists haven't spent much time in remote areas such as this in Africa. So a lot of the species that you'll find here, besides tigerfish, would be new species, or at least different strains of existing species. And it's just fun to come out here and from an angling point of view, catch fish that might haven't been found yet, that haven't been documented yet. To me, it's one of the best things of fly fishing is to travel far and catch new species on fly, and even better if they haven't been documented yet. That's what fly fishing is all about to me.
What's cool is Leonard, he's the African version of me. He's out here to try and catch as many different species as possible. And when Leonard came running, I knew I had something cool. And you know, he's taking pictures like crazy, so I'm like, gosh, I better take pictures like crazy here too. This is really something. And it was one of the most beautiful fish I've ever seen. I mean, this fish at the tip of every one of his scales was turquoise in color, tail was red. I mean, wow. I mean, this place is cool.
Jeff has caught an African yellowfish, a species common throughout the continent. What makes this fish different, however, is that this particular strain of yellowfish has never before been caught or documented, until now. And if catching a fish that has never before been seen doesn't excite you, then a trip through the rapids of an African river will. Upper Maniera River, a fishery that delivers impressive whitewater, some seriously large hippos, and the kind of fishing experience that even a seasoned world traveler like Jeff Currier will never forget.
One of the top moments of my fly fishing career or life, what have you, came when I held this big tigerfish. I mean, we've been here for a week. I've been relentless casting the big rods all day long from, 5:30 in the morning till 7 at night, sunrise to sunset. I've gone through all the hardships, you know, that tiger fishing gives you. And all of a sudden, on literally the last day, I catch that fish. I mean, I was satisfied with my 12-pounder in the first day. I was satisfied, you know, a couple days later I got a 14 and then a 15, you know, got all the pictures and stuff, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And then I catch a tiger fish that I never imagined I would catch in my life. And I reach around the tail and I can't get my hand around it. I'm like, oh my goodness, I've really got something here. I go to lift it out of the water and my arms start shaking a little bit. This is a big tiger fish. And I'm looking at this fish and I'm knowing this is probably gonna be one of the most incredible fish I've ever caught in my life. And what's cool about it is I actually got myself in the frame of mind to appreciate that. I know I've caught fish in the past where after it all happened and the fish went away, I'm like, I didn't enjoy it enough. But this fish, I really made eye contact. I looked at him, I watched his mouth snapped, I admired him. I took good care of him, you know, I made sure he was breathing, and every time I put him in the water, it's like, oh, he's gonna get away from me again. I mean, I'm not done with you yet, buddy. So it's just, I'm gonna go home so happy. I mean, this is just unbelievable. I can't even wait to see the pictures in the film.
Sweet dreams and thinking nice places, all the friendly faces that you know. Don't forget that the way to figure out is step by step. Take it slow. Only time will tell if we fell on where we'll go. Just take it slow.
Conservationist and naturalist John Muir wrote, "When one tugs at a single thing in nature, he finds it attached to the rest of the world." These connections that Muir describes are found in life, in nature, and certainly all throughout the sport of fly fishing. The irony, however, is that in modern times, where people are more connected, in touch, and switched on than ever before, fly fishing still provides us with access to quiet rivers, undeveloped stream banks, and untouched flats. Some of the last remaining places where we are truly allowed to disconnect.
Okay. Okay. Everybody? Be quiet, please.
待たせしました。お買い上げありがとうございました。
Don't touch my mustache.